At my mom's funeral, everyone cried, except my dad. While I stood by her casket, trying not to fall apart, I saw him standing a few feet away, staring at his phone. No tears, no emotion. Just cold silence. My mother, Elaine, had been gone for barely a week. She'd spent her last days in pain, asking for him. He'd told us he was away on a business trip and couldn't get back in time. I believed him until that day. The church smelled like flowers and old wood. People whispered prayers, and the pastor's voice echoed through the hall. I tried to focus, but then I heard two of my mom's cousins behind me. Their voices were soft, but the words burned into me. "I still can't believe he was in Santa Fe when she died," one of them said. My breath caught. Santa Fe? My dad had said he was in Chicago for work. I turned slightly, pretending to adjust my hair, listening harder. "Yeah," the other replied. "Someone saw him at the airport. He wasn't alone either. Some younger woman was with him." The world around me went quiet. I felt the blood rush from my face. I wanted to turn around and scream, but my body wouldn't move. I stared at the casket instead, my hands shaking. My mother had died alone, thinking her husband was working. But he was with someone else, his mistress. After the service, people hugged me, told me how strong I was, how proud my mom would be. I nodded and smiled like I was fine. Inside, I was breaking apart. My dad barely looked at me. He shook hands with guests, smiled politely, and talked about moving forward. He didn't even mention her name once. When everyone left, I stayed behind. The candles were still burning. I touched the side of my mom's coffin and whispered, "I'm going to find out the truth." That night, I went back to my parents' house. It still smelled like her perfume and medicine. Her blanket was folded neatly on the couch. I walked into their bedroom and sat on the edge of her bed. My dad's suitcase was still open from his trip. Plane tickets, receipts, and a photo of him and a woman at a restaurant in Santa Fe stared back at me. My chest tightened. There it was, the proof. He had lied. I could almost hear my mom's voice, calm and gentle, telling me not to cry. But I couldn't stop. I didn't know who the woman was yet or why my dad thought he could hide this. But I knew one thing. I was going to uncover everything he did. He had already buried my mom's heart once. I wasn't going to let him bury the truth too. That night, sitting alone in her room, I made a promise. He thought he got away with it, but this was just the beginning. The day after the funeral, I sat alone in my mom's room. The air still smelled like her favorite lavender lotion. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen dark, case cracked near the corner. I picked it up, my hands trembling a little. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe a clue, maybe something to make sense of everything. I started scrolling through her messages. Most were with me or her friends, talking about doctors, recipes, the garden. Then I saw my dad's name. Their last messages were short, almost cold. The last one she sent said, "Please come home. I don't feel well." There was no reply from him. I kept scrolling and found something that stopped me. It was a draft never sent. Just 6 words. "I know about her, Richard." My stomach dropped. My mom knew. She'd found out about the other woman before she died. I sat there staring at the screen until my eyes blurred. The phone slipped from my hand onto the bed. I went to my dad's office, still filled with his things. Papers stacked neatly, a few framed pictures, his computer left on. I searched through his drawers, and that's when I found the travel receipts. Flights, hotel bookings, all from the same week Mom passed away. The destination was Santa Fe, not Chicago. He had lied right to my face. Each receipt felt heavier than the last. There was a hotel bill with 2 guests listed. 2. He hadn't just been away on business. He was with someone else. I took a picture of everything, needing proof. Then I called one of his old colleagues, someone I remembered from when I was younger, Tom. He sounded surprised to hear from me. When I asked if he knew about the Santa Fe trip, there was a long pause on the line. Finally, Tom sighed and said, "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, Harper, but your dad wasn't alone. He brought a woman, Mara something. Mara Tilden, I think. Young, maybe late 20s. Hearing that name felt like a knife twisting. Mara Tilden. I thanked him and hung up before he could say more. That night, when my dad came home, I confronted him. I held up the receipts and my phone. "Who's Mara, Dad?" He froze for a second, then gave me that same calm, fake look he always used when he was lying. "Your mother was sick, Harper," he said. "She got paranoid. She made things up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She didn't make this up. You were with her when Mom was dying." He shook his head, pretending to look hurt. "You're grieving. You don't know what you're saying." I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I just said, "I'll find out the truth myself." He walked away without another word, leaving me standing there shaking with anger. I looked down at the receipts again. He thought I'd stop digging. He had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I packed a small bag, filled my car with gas, and drove to Santa Fe. The road stretched for hours, the desert sun bright and sharp through the windshield. I didn't know exactly what I'd say when I found her, but I knew I had to look her in the eye. The name Mara Tilden played over and over in my head. It wasn't hard to find her. My dad's receipts had the name of the hotel they stayed at. When I arrived, I asked around, pretending to be a client of my father's. The front desk clerk remembered them immediately. "Mr. Lynn and his wife?" she asked with a smile. The word wife made me sick. I thanked her and asked if she knew where I could find Mara. She gave me an address, an art gallery nearby. I stood outside the gallery for a long time before walking in. The walls were white, filled with soft, abstract paintings. And then I saw her. Mara. She was tall, with perfect hair and a calm confidence that made my skin crawl. She looked more like a model than a person who destroys families. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice smooth and polite. "I'm Harper Lynn," I said quietly. "Richard's daughter." Her face froze for half a second, then she smiled, pretending not to be nervous. "Oh," she said lightly. "I've heard about you." "Have you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She nodded. "Your father talked about you a lot. He's very proud." I wanted to laugh at the lie, but I didn't. I just watched her, waiting. Finally, she sighed and crossed her arms. "You came all this way," she said. "So, I guess you know." "Know what?" I asked. "That we were together," she said, her tone almost casual. 3 years. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, but sometimes people fall in love. 3 years. My mother had been sick for almost half that time. I clenched my fists, trying to keep calm. "My mom knew," I said quietly. "She found out before she died." Mara didn't seem surprised. She shrugged. "Elaine was a smart woman. I think she just didn't want you to get hurt. She told Richard once that she'd rather die than have you hate him." Her words hit me like a wave. My mother had known and still tried to protect me. Then Mara said something she didn't mean to. "He promised we'd start over soon," she said. "He said he'd sell the house once things settled. We were going to move west." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and looked down, pretending to be upset. My phone, hidden in my jacket pocket, was recording everything. When I finally left, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the gallery door. I had the proof I needed. They had betrayed my mother, and they didn't even feel sorry. On the drive back home, the plan started forming in my mind. It wasn't enough to confront him again. He had to lose everything, just like she did. The lawyer's office smelled like paper and old coffee. I sat in a leather chair, twisting my hands in my lap, waiting for the reading of my mother's will to start. My dad sat beside me, calm as ever, wearing his expensive suit like he was at a business meeting instead of something this personal. He hadn't looked at me once since we walked in. The lawyer, a gray-haired man named Mr. Dalton, opened a thick folder and cleared his throat. "Elaine Lynn's estate will be divided equally between her husband, Richard Lynn, and her daughter, Harper Lynn." For a second, I thought I heard him wrong. "Equally?" I asked. He nodded. "That includes the house, the savings accounts, and her personal items." I felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. My mom had left half to me, but also half to the man who betrayed her. My dad gave me a forced smile. "Your mother always wanted us to stay close," he said softly, like he was trying to sound kind. After the meeting, he turned to me in the parking lot. "We should sell the house," he said right away. "Split the money and move on. It'll be good for both of us." I stared at him. "You want to sell Mom's house already?" He shrugged. "It's too big for you. Too full of memories. You'll feel better once it's gone." I pretended to think about it and nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. Give me a few days to go through her things first." He smiled, satisfied, and walked away. I watched him drive off, my chest burning with anger. There was no way I was selling that house. Not until I knew why my mom had left things the way she did. That night, I went through her desk drawers, closets, even her sewing box. I didn't know what I was searching for, but something in me said she wouldn't have left without saying more. Finally, in the back of her dresser, I found a small envelope taped to the wood. My name was written on it in her handwriting. I sat on the bed and opened it carefully. Inside was a folded letter. My hands shook as I began to read. "My dearest Harper, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I need you to know that I found out about your father and the other woman. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to remember him as the man he used to be, not the one he became. I left an insurance policy in your name. It's separate from everything else. You won't need his permission for it. I trust you'll use it wisely." The last line was written in darker ink, as if she pressed harder with the pen. "Don't let him bury the truth with me." I read the letter 3 times, crying quietly. My mother knew everything. She'd left me not just money, but a mission. When I folded the letter and tucked it back in the envelope, something inside me hardened. My dad wanted to erase her memory and build a new life on lies. I was done letting him win. From that night on, I promised myself one thing. I would destroy him with the same lies he used to destroy her. I called my dad a few days later and told him I was thinking about selling the house. He sounded pleased, almost cheerful, like he'd finally gotten his way. I said I just needed a few days to go through Mom's things, to decide what to keep. He agreed right away, telling me to take my time. His voice was too smooth, too eager. He had no idea what I was really planning. For the next 2 days, I stayed in the house, going through every drawer and cabinet. I started in the office where he used to work. The room was neat, but the drawers were full of old files, some labeled, some not. I flipped through folders filled with business records, invoices, and receipts. Then I found one labeled Expenses Private. The moment I opened it, my heart began to race. Inside were pages of accounting reports, but they didn't look right. The company's money had been used for personal spending: airline tickets, luxury hotels, expensive jewelry, and dinners in Santa Fe. Every single charge lined up with the dates he had been away. I didn't need to guess who those gifts were for. I took photos of every page, making sure to save copies in a secure folder on my laptop. That night, I sat in the living room staring at the documents. My father had stolen from his own company to pay for his affair. It wasn't just cheating, it was fraud. I thought about who could use this information, and one name came to mind: Caleb Moore, his longtime business partner. I remembered Caleb as strict and serious, a man who hated dishonesty. I created a new email account with no name or details that could trace back to me. I attached the documents and wrote only a short message: "You should see where your company money is going." Then I sent it. The next day, everything began to crumble. My dad showed up at the house looking pale and tense. He didn't greet me. He went straight to the kitchen, pacing. "Something's wrong with the accounts," he muttered. "Caleb froze the company funds without warning. He thinks someone's been stealing." I kept my face calm. "That sounds serious," I said quietly, pretending to sound concerned. He looked at me, eyes sharp. "You wouldn't know anything about this, would you?" I shrugged. "Why would I?" He sighed and rubbed his forehead, frustrated. "Caleb's being paranoid. I'll straighten it out." But as the hours passed, I could see the cracks forming. He made call after call, his voice growing more desperate each time. He shouted into the phone, then slammed it down. The man who had once controlled everything was falling apart in front of me, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. I just watched him unravel, keeping my voice calm and my expression blank. Inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: power. He had buried my mother in lies. Now, piece by piece, I was digging him out of his own. It was late afternoon when I heard the sound of tires screeching outside. My heart jumped as my dad's car stopped in front of the house. Before I could move, the front door burst open. He stormed in, his face red, eyes burning with anger. "What did you do?" he shouted, slamming the door behind him. "Caleb thinks I've been stealing. Someone sent him company records, private records. You think I don't know it was you?" I stood still, clutching the edge of the table. "Why would I do that?" I said, my voice calm even though my heart was racing. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Don't play stupid, Harper. You've hated me ever since your mother died. You're trying to ruin me." "Ruin you?" I said quietly. "You did that yourself." His face twisted. "You're my daughter. You're supposed to stand by me." I took a step closer. "You weren't there for her. Why should I be there for you?" That stopped him for a second. His anger flickered into something else. Shame, maybe, but it didn't last. "Your mother didn't understand me," he snapped. "She was sick, bitter, always angry. Mara was different. She made me feel alive again." Hearing her name made my stomach turn. "You loved her," I said, not as a question but as a statement. He didn't hesitate. "Yes. Long before your mother got sick. Elaine and I hadn't been happy for years. You think she was perfect, but she wasn't. She pushed me away." My eyes filled with tears. "She was dying, Dad." "She wasn't pushing you away," She was in pain. And you left her alone to be with someone else. He looked away, jaw tight. You'll never understand. I needed something real. I walked to the drawer where I had hidden my phone. My hands shook as I opened the recording app. I pressed play. Mara's voice filled the room, calm and proud. 3 years together, and he still says he'll sell the house for me. Poor Elaine never had a clue until the end. My dad froze. The color drained from his face. Where did you get that? He whispered. I stared at him, tears streaming down my face. From her, Dad. The woman you loved more than Mom. The one you left her for. He took a step back, looking like he'd been hit. You recorded her? You don't know what you're doing. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. I'm showing you what you really are. He opened his mouth but couldn't speak. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked small, like a man who finally saw the wreckage he caused. You left her to die alone, I said softly. I'll never forgive you for that. He didn't try to argue. He just turned away, his hands trembling as he reached for the door. When it shut behind him, the silence was heavy. He was gone, humiliated, desperate, and for the first time in his life, completely alone. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of knocking. It was still early, the sun barely rising through the curtains. I opened the door and froze. Mara was standing there. Her perfect hair was messy, her makeup smudged, and she looked nothing like the calm, confident woman I had met in Santa Fe. Please, Harper, she said the moment she saw me. I need your help. I didn't move. You shouldn't be here. She stepped forward, her eyes wide with panic. He's not answering my calls. Richard, he's in trouble. The company's under investigation. Caleb's gone to the authorities, and they're looking into missing funds. They think I'm involved. I crossed my arms. Maybe because you are. Her lips parted in shock. What are you talking about? I kept my voice cold. The flights, the hotel bills, the jewelry, all paid for with company money. The same money he used to impress you. Every single receipt has your name on it somewhere. She shook her head quickly. No, I didn't know that. He told me everything was fine. He said it was his own money. Then you were just as blind as my mother, I said. But the difference is, Mom didn't choose to be lied to. You did. Tears welled in her eyes. You have to talk to him. Tell him to fix this before it's too late. They're saying we could both face charges. I almost laughed. You think I'm going to save you? After what you did to my mother. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she said, her voice shaking. I loved him. I stared at her for a long moment. You loved a man who left his dying wife alone. You loved his money, his promises, and his lies. Now you can love the mess he left you in. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Please, Harper. I don't know what to do. I walked to the table, picked up my phone, and opened a folder. You should probably disappear, I said quietly. Because if you don't, I'll send your messages to the IRS myself. She froze. What messages? I turned the screen toward her. There they were, screenshots of texts between her and my dad, the ones I had found when I went through his files. Messages about money, flights, and plans to start over after selling the house. Her face went pale. You set this up. I didn't deny it. You and he thought you could bury the truth. I just made sure it came back up. Mara stared at me for a long time, then wiped her tears. You're just like him, she said quietly. No, I replied. I finish what people like him start. She turned and walked out without another word. The next morning, her car was gone from the motel down the street. No one saw her again. And for the first time, the house finally felt quiet. The news came slowly at first, rumors whispered by old clients, then reports in the local paper. Within a week, it was everywhere. My father's company was being investigated for fraud and embezzlement. Caleb Moore had officially filed a lawsuit against him, claiming Richard had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars in company funds. Every luxury trip, every expensive gift, every secret he had tried to hide was now public. I sat in the living room, watching the story unfold on the news. They showed pictures of the office, employees leaving with boxes, and Caleb giving a short statement outside the courthouse. He didn't mention my father's name, but he didn't need to. Everyone already knew. My dad had always been the man who controlled everything. The house, the business, the money, the people around him. Now all of that was gone. Clients backed out of contracts, investors pulled their money, and his reputation collapsed faster than I could have imagined. I didn't feel happy. I didn't even feel proud. I just felt tired. Watching it happen didn't bring Mom back, and it didn't make the hurt fade. But it did make something else clear. justice wasn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it was slow, steady, and quiet, like water wearing down stone. Caleb sent a letter to the house a few days later. He explained that my dad was no longer welcome at the company and that all accounts were frozen pending the investigation. I folded the letter and placed it in the same box where I kept my mother's note. It felt like another chapter closing, one she had warned me would come. That night, my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from my dad. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time before pressing play. His voice was different, shaky, broken. "You win," he said quietly. There was a long pause. "Are you happy now? You've ruined everything I've worked for. They're saying I could go to prison. Caleb, the board, everyone's turned their backs on me. I don't even have Mara anymore. She left. I hope this makes you feel better." I stopped the message halfway through and pressed delete. I didn't want to hear any more excuses or guilt. He had made his choices. He had left my mother to die alone, lied to me, and built his life on stolen money and broken promises. Now he was finally living with the weight of it. I set the phone down and looked around the house. The same walls that once echoed with arguments were quiet now. The silence wasn't sad anymore, it was peaceful. Outside, the evening light was fading. I stepped onto the porch and watched the last bit of sun sink behind the trees. Somewhere across town, my father was sitting in an empty house, surrounded by the pieces of his own destruction. For the first time, he was facing what he had done, without anyone left to save him. I didn't need to hear another word. I just walked back inside and closed the door. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery. The air was cool and quiet, and the grass still wet from the night before. My mother's grave was at the far end, beneath a big oak tree that shaded the headstones. I brought fresh flowers, white lilies, the kind she loved most, and knelt down beside her name carved into the stone. For a long time, I didn't speak. I just sat there, listening to the wind move through the branches. Everything that had happened replayed in my mind, the lies, the fights, the truth finally coming out. It had all led me here, to the one person who never deserved any of it. I reached into my bag and took out her letter again. The paper had grown soft from how many times I'd read it, but I wanted to go through it one last time. Her words felt different now. When she wrote that she trusted me to use the insurance money wisely, I finally understood what she meant. She wasn't just talking about money. She was talking about strength, about standing up for the truth even when it hurt. She had known I would face it all, even when I didn't think I could. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "You knew, didn't you? You knew I'd find everything." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves above me. I liked to think it was her way of answering. When I left the cemetery, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt steady. The pain was still there, but it wasn't sharp like before. It was softer, like a scar that had finally stopped bleeding. Back at the house, I walked through each room slowly. The walls were worn, the floors needed polish, and the garden had grown wild. My dad had wanted to sell it, to erase everything that reminded him of her. But I couldn't do that. This was her home, her laughter, her scent, her love still lingered in every corner. So I made a decision. I was going to fix it. Not to hold on to the past, but to give her memory something beautiful. I started in the garden. She used to sit by the window with a book, watching the roses outside. That spot had gone empty for months. I bought a new rose bush from the nursery, the same pale pink kind she used to grow. As I planted it near the window, my hands covered in soil, I felt close to her again. The smell of earth and roses filled the air, warm and comforting. When I stood up and looked at the house, the sunlight caught on the windows, and for a moment, I could almost see her sitting there, smiling. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was something gentle, something real. And I knew, wherever she was, my mother could finally rest. It was late one night when I heard a car stop outside the house. The sound of the engine cut through the quiet. I looked out the window and saw a familiar figure stepping out. My heart sank. It was my father. He looked nothing like the man I grew up with. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair messy, and his face pale and tired. For a moment, I thought he might be drunk, but when he came closer, I saw something worse, defeat. He knocked on the door softly at first, then harder. I didn't move right away. I just stood there, staring at the door, unsure if I wanted to open it. Finally, I took a deep breath and turned the handle. He looked up at me with eyes that were red and wet. "Harper," he said, his voice shaky. "Please, I just need to talk." I didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway, waiting. He rubbed his hands together, like he was trying to warm them. I've lost everything, he said. The company's gone. Caleb took me to court. They froze my accounts. Mara left. She won't even answer my calls. Everyone thinks I'm a thief. He laughed weakly, but there was no humor in it. I guess that's what I am now. A thief. A fool. I said nothing. The sound of crickets filled the silence between us. He looked around the house, his eyes landing on the window where the rose bush grew. You fixed the place, he whispered. Your mother would have liked that. I felt a lump form in my throat, but stayed quiet. He took a deep breath. I've been thinking about her a lot. About you. About everything I did. His voice broke. I didn't mean to hurt her, Harper. I didn't mean to hurt you. I finally spoke. You didn't mean to? My voice was low but steady. You chose to. You left her when she needed you most. You lied to both of us. He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. I know. I thought I could make it right, but it's too late. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I need you to forgive me. For a long moment, I just looked at him. He was trembling, desperate, smaller than I had ever seen him. But the words I wanted to say, every angry, broken thing, stayed stuck inside me. Instead, I said quietly, You buried Mom before she died. You don't get to ask me for mercy. His face crumpled, and he reached out a hand, but I stepped back. Please, Harper, he whispered. I've got no one else. I know, I said. And now you understand how she felt. Before he could say another word, I closed the door. The sound echoed through the hall, heavy and final. I stood there for a moment, listening to his footsteps fade away. Then I looked toward the window, where the moonlight touched the rose bush. The house was quiet again, calm, almost peaceful. That night, I finally buried my father, too. Do you think Harper did the right thing by shutting the door on her father, or should she have forgiven him for everything he did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Thanks for watching.